There are new signs this morning that the Boeing 737 MAX will not be flying passengers for a while. The Federal Aviation Administration met with foreign regulators in Fort Worth yesterday to discuss the jet's future following two recent deadly crashes. Kris Van Cleave spoke to the FAA's acting administrator. He's at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport with more on this story. Kris, a lot of people still very leery about this plane, even when it comes back into operation. What'd you learn?
Well, good morning, Gayle. In fact, we have new numbers about how concerned the flying public is. But as Dan Elwell was making his case to the rest of the world that they should essentially trust the FAA when they say the 737 MAX is safe to fly, new numbers show the flying public is leery of the airplane regardless of what the FAA says. What has to happen for this plane to get back in the air?
We have to finish our system safety analysis. There will be some test flights that have to be done. And when we're convinced that the 737 MAX is safe to fly again, we will lift the prohibition order.
Are we close to that point?
We don't have a timeline.
Aviation regulators from 33 countries where the Boeing 737 MAX flies came to this FAA facility in Fort Worth Thursday. At a closed-door meeting, acting FAA Administrator Dan Elwell laid out the agency's plan for certifying the MAX as safe. Some countries did not attend, a sign the MAX may start flying first in the U.S. while the world watches.
None of us are going to lift the prohibition on the 737 MAX until it's safe to do so.
But a new study found only about 1 in 5 people surveyed would definitely fly on a 737 MAX in the first 6 months of its return to service. Roughly half said they'd be unlikely to get on board.
So it's important that the FAA doesn't regulate by survey, right? We regulate, we're in the last 10 years in the United States, 90 million flights, 7 billion passengers carried, with 1 fatality.
But if the public doesn't think the plane's safe, don't you need to listen to that?
Yes, we need to be concerned if the public is concerned about flight. Yes, is that bothersome? It's bothersome. But we can't respond specifically to that concern when it comes to setting safety standards.
So the FAA says no timeline, but it's getting increasingly likely that we won't see the MAX carrying passengers until possibly the end of the summer or even the fall. Boeing says it's still working on answering information requests from the FAA about the software. The airlines say once they're told they can fly, it'll take them 4 to 6 weeks to have the planes ready to go. But Boeing is already working on its PR strategy to rebuild trust in the plane. They've hired a big-time PR firm, but it sounds like they're going to plan to lean heavily on the pilots to build goodwill with passengers, which has some pilots saying they're there for safety, not to be Boeing's arm candy.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to be arm candy either. Kris, the MAX remains grounded until the fall, perhaps you mentioned. Meanwhile, AAA says 3.25 million people will fly over this Memorial Day weekend. How will the grounding affect aircraft operations now?
Well, so direct impact will be fairly limited because the airlines knew the plane would be out of service and have pulled it from the schedule. The indirect impacts could be it may have cost you more to book your ticket because there were fewer seats available because there were fewer planes in service, and I would expect the flights to be a little bit more crowded than they otherwise would have been. And keep in mind, the predictions are more people will be flying this year than last year.
Well,
Kris, thank you very much.
Yeah, Boeing's PR team has a real uphill battle here.
People are very leery. The American Airlines CEO and the United CEO said they would be among the first passengers to get on the MAX when it's back.
Well, I'm going to have to see a lot of people fly it before I get on it again. I remember the U.S. was one of the last countries to take it out of service, which was very concerning after 2 crashes. So you're right. You're right, Anthony. They have a real uphill battle.
Indeed.